Hello, my friends. Today is Friday, August 2nd. Here are actually five big stories for you today. So the first is this. I ran across this article and I thought this was interesting. The AFU General Staff develops a proposal to simplify a mechanism for attracting citizens to military service on mobilization. Can you imagine how difficult it would be to be in charge of mobilizing an entire country for a war in Ukraine? And they centralize their mobilization centers, but commanders on the ground actually need certain things. So they're trying to unpack. There should be a centralization of mobilization for most things, but if a commander needs something quickly, how do you get to it? So here, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on an initiative basis, has developed proposals for changes to the procedure for conscription of citizens for military service on mobilization. It's indicated that the introduction of appropriate changes will simplify the mechanism for attracting citizens to military service on mobilization. Those who are liable for military service can choose vacant positions that exist in military units. Now, we do this in corporations all the time, right? If there's a a particular job that's open, people can select that job and apply for it. Well, they're doing the same kind of thing here, including in a related civilian specialty or skills. Appropriate changes will help offset the risks for citizens to be called up through centers of traditional territorial recruitment. So let's say you're a mechanic or an electrician. You could apply for something that's open within the armed forces as a mechanic, let's say, and like we know that this regiment has that. The commander says we have the need for this kind of mechanic, and so that slot is open. It's better for you to choose that slot than just be generally mobilized, perhaps, because you can use your skills for the war effort rather than just be placed somewhere. So that's an appropriate kind of thing for them to be doing, and I think that's a good innovation. Okay, big story number two. Kyiv runs into strong opposition on tax hike to fund the war, according to Politico. Nobody likes taxes. I don't like taxes, but they're in a bad place right now, and they have to raise a certain amount of money so that they can fund their government. Now, they're getting plenty from the West, but they don't have enough. There's still a shortfall, and things break all the time. Unfortunately, they keep getting destroyed. The draft law introduced in the Ukrainian parliament in July aims to raise 120 billion hryvnia, that's $3 billion US, in additional revenue. While the government argues a tax hike is necessary to support defense capabilities, it faces strong opposition from domestic and international businesses who warn of potential economic instability. So if the taxes go too high, you can spur an underground economy, and that can be bad. The war has been going on for the third year, and the government has been doing everything possible not to raise taxes for businesses. Today, all of their sources of increasing the funding for the defense forces have already been exhausted, says the finance minister. Okay. In contrast, the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce strongly criticized the move, arguing that the search for additional revenues through the introduction of new taxes will greatly burden businesses. It will. Now, you never tax yourself into prosperity. That doesn't happen. It can't happen. Even in peacetime, you don't tax yourself into prosperity. You grow because you become prosperous by becoming more efficient in what you're doing, or by doing other things that will help you grow in such a way that you can have more tax revenue without having, burden people into that. So I get what they're trying to do. It's just a terrible time in order to be trying to do this. Penny Pritzker, the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine's economic recovery, suggested alternative approaches during a briefing in Kyiv. The United States is encouraging the Ukrainian government to increase revenues primarily by reforming customs and combating gray markets. So here we're talking about not quite a black market, but gray markets where it's a little sketchy. If you can control these, then you can get some of this revenue. But trying to increase the tax burden right now is, of course, going to be unpopular, but it's not necessarily going to be that successful either. In contrast, this is actually really good. Turkey ratified a free trade agreement with Ukraine, according to their daily news. The agreement was signed on February 3rd, 2022, and Turkish President Recep Erdogan approved it and its annexes on August 1st. Today is August 2nd. The completion of the ratification of the free trade agreement with Turkey will unite all Black Sea countries except Russia into a single economic space mutually beneficial for all countries, Ukraine's deputy prime minister said. Okay, so this free trade zone in the Black Sea is going to be awesome so again, the way to wealth is either greater efficiency or free trade, because when you trade, you're trading for something that's better, and you're better off because you made the trade as long as it's a free trade. And so that's a really good thing. It's like NAFTA for the Black Sea, and I think this will be powerful. Okay, fourth big story. Evan Gershkovich and a few others are home. So welcome home, Evan, writes the Wall Street Journal, continuing, freedom does not exist without a free press. That's a very true statement. You have to have freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom to assemble. All these freedoms are bundled together, and without any one of them, you're not likely to have real meaningful freedom. But I'm glad he's home. Welcome home. I am concerned about what Russia might do next, given that they got something out of this, and they wouldn't have done it without having gotten something out of it. So here, Yashin on the swap, realizing that you're free because a murderer is free is difficult. It's emotionally very hard. He refused to ask for pardon. I won't ask for mercy from Putin, whom I consider a war criminal, a tyrant, a murderer. I'll never seek mercy from my country's enemy. Okay, so that's one of the people that was freed. So what did Russia get out of the deal? Some spies and murderers. The White House invited the families of the citizens and residents held in Russian prisons to speak to them as they were released. So it's a good moment. It's a victory lap for Biden. And I'm not taking anything away from him, but there could be an unintended consequence to this as well. Now, this is really wild, too. Peskov said that children of the Russian spies, Doltsevs, learned that they are Russians only yesterday when the plane left Ankara. The fact is that the Doltsevs used a cover pretending to be Argentine citizens. In Slovenia, they were sentenced to prison terms for espionage. Poor children, a moral injury in life. Putin actually spoke to them in Spanish because they didn't know Russian, the kids. So, wow. Okay, now, what's actually happened here? Gary Kasparov said, it's a wonderful day when friends and allies are released from Putin's gulag and able to see their families again. But don't forget that exchanging regime murderers and spies for innocent hostages and political prisoners promotes Russia's production of both. Right? You're going to get more hostages and more prisoners. This is only incentivizing Russia to go and grab more Americans or Westerners and make them, use trumped up charges and make them, prisoners, hostages, so that they can do this again. Those cynically rating this deal ignore that it serves Putin's interest, or he would not do it. He killed Navalny, so he wouldn't be part of it, and now he confirms to his cadres of spies and thugs that they will not suffer punishment for crimes that they carry out for him. It's a mafia loyalty. So let's stop there. If you think about how the mafia works and then you overlay Putin over that, a lot of these kind of things make sense. It's a mafia. Loyalty is everything. As long as Don Putin can protect his killers, leaders, and money men, they have no incentive to betray him. The eagerness of the West and this White House to make deals with dictators like Putin and Maduro instead of using deterrence empowers them. This strategic failing also makes me fear the Biden White House added other concessions. Did they include limits on weapons to Ukraine and its ability to strike Russian targets, withholding stronger sanctions on Russian oil? Did they essentially trade Ukrainian lives for hostages? Now, we do not know. He's speculating. We have no evidence of that. But wow, what could have been behind the deal? Again, I hate to be a cloud on a sunny day. I have friends and colleagues tasting freedom today. I am overjoyed. While we celebrate, keep view of the big picture. And I think that's wise advice. Now, this is Chatham House talking about why we do not negotiate with terrorists. It's for this reason. There's a moral argument that governments should not negotiate with terrorists. Paying ransoms, for instance, helps terrorist groups maintain control over territory, pay their members, fuel further terrorism and hostage-taking. And negotiating with terrorists encourages more terrorism. So they do not negotiate with terrorist positions is underpinned by the argument that the best way of stopping hostage-taking by terrorists is to remove remove the incentives. Well, but we've done this kind of thing before. We've traded with the Soviets back in the day, right? But that was trading one of our spies for one of their spies. Not a hostage that was on trumped up charges, but one of our spies for one of theirs. That's a very different place to be. Okay. Big story number 5. This night, Hezbollah fires dozens of rockets toward Israel. The Iron Dome system was triggered in western Galilee. In response, the Israeli Air Force struck Hezbollah launcher in the Yatir area in southern Lebanon. And then Hezbollah resumed steady rocket artillery fire during the day today. And so why is this important? It's important because it's going to keep going. And this, again, it's not that Israel's not important, but we're talking about Ukraine on this channel, and anything that that Israel is doing with Hezbollah or Hamas could potentially take our eyes off what's going on in Ukraine. And that's bad. And it's very strange. This is Kasparov again. Red lines for allies, safe zones for enemies. I hope such talk is just political showmanship, but the track record says otherwise. And when you look behind it, I think this meme actually, it's not that Putin is causing it, but Putin certainly stands to benefit and would love to see more Hezbollah, Houthi, Hamas attacks in that region, because that's extra destabilization that gives him a freer hand in Ukraine. Okay, that's all that I have here. I just did a video, by the way, about Harris is beating Trump in recent polling, and I'm being fair. I'm showing what's actually happening, how Trump is just not having a good week. And so you want to check that video out as well. Thank you for your time and the likes. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.